Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. In this video we're going to talk about modulating our distortion. I meant to make this video earlier and I completely forgot. Therefore it is unnumbered, but it will drop into the playlist where I intend for it to be seen. So if you've come across this video and you're not going through my videos in order and you get a little bit confused, then you can just jump into the playlist and walk your way back until all of this is going to start making sense. Okay, so here's our sound we're going to start with. Just a square wave, a little bit of filtering there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our effects section, and I'm going to drop an FX chain first. I'm using an FX chain because we're going to have multiple things going on in here, and I'd like to have macro controls there. Okay, so I can have 8 specific macros on anything that I build inside of this FX chain. So the next thing I'm going to add in here is a LFO. You might be wondering, why am I adding an LFO? Well, I want to have more variation than perhaps just these 2 LFOs here. And what you'll notice is if I add a distortion in here, I could use these 2 LFOs to control various parameters. This one I won't be able to. But I want to have even more variation if that's possible. You don't have to add in an additional LFO if you don't want to. But now we have our distortion, and let's go ahead and just set this up like I've set it up before. Start it out at that solid state, turn off any pre-filter gain, completely get rid of these filters, and let's take a listen. And I think I might want to hype some of the even ordered harmonics as well, so I'll find a nice sweet spot. All right, so that sounds good. Now what I'm going to do is what we saw in the last video. I'm going to add an EQ5 in here, and this is really unique and really cool because this is specifically impacting our wet effects of the distortion. So if we were to modulate something inside of the EQ5, inside of the EQ2, or inside of a filter, we're only specifically modulating the distortion, so just this sound. So I'm going to start by setting this up quickly. I don't want too much action in the low end. There's already a lot of stuff going on down there. So I'll probably just pull this filter up a bit. And when you have your distortion mix set to 100%, we're only hearing the distorted signal, so we can really hone in on these EQ settings. Obviously, if I pull this back, we'll start to hear some of that low end. Okay? I'm also maybe going to put on just a little bit of a high pass here, or excuse me, a low pass, high cut. Okay, very cool. And now we're going to start getting into our modulation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 2 different ones that are going to modulate. One of them is going to be a gain, and I'll be able to sweep around in here. The other one I want to use to make a notch filter. So let's set up the notch filter first. And we can control how much notch by setting up this resonance here. So I'm going to set something maybe in the 3 range or so. Let's just listen to this. And I'm going to set it somewhere kind of in the middle at this point. I'm going to go into my FX chain. I'm going to switch this to bipolar. And I'm going to map out this 4th frequency. So let's say by 30 for right now and just see how far that takes us. The frustrating thing is that it's hard to actually see what we're doing here. Okay, that's actually a pretty good range. So let me just rename this to Notch Freak. And we can listen back. Very cool. Up next, I want to set a macro that is going to control the amount of sharpness in this actual notch filter itself. So we can go out maybe this wide all the way up to something super, super narrow. And again, I think I'm going to set this to bipolar too. And let's get something that we think would work good in the middle. So not too wide, not too narrow either. Maybe something like there. And I'll just go by, I don't know, that much and see how wide it takes it. That's obviously a little bit too extreme, so we'll pull back on it. All right, that looks a little bit better for me. And now let's go ahead and set up our actual gain control here. So right now I want this to be at 0. And since by default the notch is set at like 2.31 kilohertz, we'll pull this one down to about 400 hertz, or maybe a little higher. Maybe about 500, 600, something like that. I'm going to turn this knob to bipolar. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. And let's see how this goes. We'll just increase it so I can see it moving. Okay, that works good enough for me. So this is our bell freak. And then I'm going to do the same thing I just did with the resonance. So we'll go to something in the middle for now. Switch this guy up to bipolar. And we're going to change this resonance. Okay, that's pretty cool. So now if I play back and I just control these different macros, we can hear a lot that's going on. All right, I might also want to control how much gain I'm adding into the signal with this bell. So let's pull it back to its default. And I'm going to start by putting this to 0 on number 3. And now I'm just going to add my macro control. And we'll boost this up to, I don't know, maybe plus 10. We'll see how high that goes. We could probably go higher than that. This is an effect after all. All right, that works well for me. Now here's where it starts to get fun. We're going to start modulating these a few controls here. Some will modulate inside of the EQ itself to start with. Others we're going to use to modulate our macro controls. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start by taking LFO 1. I'm going to pull the speed down on both of these. I don't want anything going too fast. And these are both set to bipolar mode. So I'm going to go ahead and change the symmetry a little bit on this one. So we're going to be getting more like a tube as we go up. And on this one, I'm going to modulate the drive again, just a touch. And maybe inside of this itself, we'll add a little bit of LFO to, I don't know, maybe we'll pull both frequencies up a little bit from the start. Actually, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to pull them both down a little, since we know that they don't reach all the way down or up. So on 3, I'll pull that one up a little bit. Okay, and they're going very slowly here. But that's kind of what I want. So we can listen to it. We'll hear some of that change. But this is still pretty lame. We're not getting that much going on. So what I can do is I can start to use these LFOs from the synth itself to control these macro knobs. And I might even, if I want to get crazy, go to the start here and add another LFO and then drop the entire FX chain inside of it. So now I have 4 LFOs to control these 4 different parameters. And I could even use these additional 3 macro controls to map some of the parameters on our LFO inside here. But let's just go ahead and start with this and see what we can get. So we'll put these all to slightly different speeds. Really, it doesn't have to be perfect at this point. We're just going for the effect. So here we go. Let that modulate quite a bit. LFO2, we'll set that to the Q amount. And actually, we'll put it in reverse so it goes the other way. We can slightly change the phase on these. And so if we want to go all the way up and down, we can set this to like 1 exactly, and it should hit all the way up. But we obviously don't have to do that if we don't want to. And then we'll reuse LFO2 for the gain control, which I want to start up a little bit. And we'll just modulate that slightly. Okay, and now if we look at what we have happening in the filter, obviously quite a bit of action in there. I'm going to turn the gain up to start. And which LFO did I use to up this frequency? I'm going to turn this frequency up a little more. And now if we play this back, now, if I had set this up a little bit smarter, I would have made sure that I was getting these 2 guys to overlap. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to show you that. It's not too hard to get that to happen. We could do a number of things to try to get that to happen. Part of that's going to be changing the phase on all of these guys. And then also making sure that we turn the notch to be moving in a different direction at its start from the bell filter. Now we're getting a little bit of crossover after I change those phases. You can make this as extreme or as subtle as you want. I could also add in some controls that would let me change the speed or the depth of some of these. So we'll just add in a couple that we have access to, which are only going to be these 2 inside for right now. So I'll set this to speed so I can pull the speed up, and I'll set this one to speed as well, and then I might just set this a little bit lower. So now I could change these relative speeds of these 2 LFOs inside. And to get real fancy, I could have those be modulated as well. And now the very end product of all of this crap is to just kind of subtly mix in the effect. So we can actually just change this wet mix here, and we're going to then get some of that original, and it's going to combine with everything we have going on here in the distortion. All right, so let's even hype this effect more. All right, perfect. So here we go. even just like subtle bits of this kind of thing really adds to the motion of your sound and really takes it in a new direction. Because if we turn this LFO off, that's what we started with, and here's just with a tiny bit of this wet mix in, 28%. All right, so I hope that was cool. I hope that was helpful for you guys, and feel free to use that in your own sound design and making your own patches. Thank you so much for watching, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.